Kip, what's up, man? Mr. World Traveler is back. You were gone for a couple of weeks and we had a great replacement for you, but it is good to have you back.
Yeah. Oh, you leave for 2 weeks and then I start wondering, like, I wonder on Monday, I get a text from Ryan going, "Hey, you know what?
Don't
Sean's
worry
got
about
us
this
covered this
week.
Monday."
I
Yeah. It's
didn't
like,
know if you'd
dang
be
it, I got
back.
replaced.
So yeah, you got to be careful. You got to stay on your toes around here.
Uh,
We've got some
I know.
high level, high caliber guys that are itching for your spot, Kip.
Yeah, totally. Dude, and I know you're kind of joking, but I'm sure without a doubt, there's a handful of guys in
I'm
the
not
Iron
joking.
Council
I'm
going,
serious.
"Hey, dude, I could do way better than Kip." Ryan, like, come on, bro.
I don't think they've said I could do way better than Kip, but they are chomping at the bit to be able to be in
Yeah.
this seat in your
To,
position.
to
So
be in your presence. Yeah.
in my almighty presence. Yeah, I don't know why anybody would want
Uh,
that, but it is what it is, I suppose. All right,
oh
man.
man.
Well, let's just jump right into questions today. It's good to have you back. I know you want to be productive. Obviously, that's what we talked about it a little bit. You know, when a lot of guys listening are probably the same way. When you go on vacation, it's cool, but there's an expiration date where the milk
Yeah.
starts to sour a little bit. You know, you like drinking milk, but it starts to sour if you don't finish it up by that expiration date. That's how I feel when I'm on vacation. It's like, all right, 3 days in, I'm like, okay, I got it. I've seen the things I wanted to see and done the things I want to do. Now I got to go back to work. So that's always a
Yeah.
weird balance for me.
Well, and I think it says a lot. It means that we're about something, and just relaxing and not doing anything and not being productive or moving the needle in some way, eventually, like, it's not satisfying. I find
But
more
so
satisfaction from the grind than I do, chilling.
I'm with you. So one little pivot, two pivots that I've made that have helped me personally is number one, start looking at vacations and trips as productive. You know, we say that it's not, I'm not being productive. Well, no, you actually are. You're building a
You,
relationship with your wife. You're building a
yeah,
relationship with your kids. You're seeing things. You're exposed to new cultures. You're trying new things. You're experimenting. So shifting from non-productivity to actually believing that it is a productive thing in a different facet of life. The other one, this is a huge little hack. If you guys ever find yourself at the beach on vacation, always bring a shovel. It just changed. Because look, I'm not going to sit on the beach and cook in the hot sun and just sit there and do nothing. That is miserable. But if I bring a shovel and I just dig a big hole, we play king of the hole where somebody gets in and everybody else tries to jump in and you got to throw other people out. Not only is it good with my kids, but all the kids that are around us, they start playing and then I slowly back out and the kids are playing. It's awesome. So always bring a shovel to the beach, guys. Always.
I love it. I love it. Well, one thing that I think it really increases my vacations is I don't stop working out. And worst
Mm.
case scenario, if I can't find a gym, I go run. And to be honest with you, that
Ugh.
is the best, because I'm in Barcelona and I'm like, what better way to see Barcelona than wake up early and go for a run?
Right.
Like, by
Nobody's
the time I get
out.
back to the house, I'm like, dude, I've seen the whole city. I saw this one chapel here. We should go check that out. Like, it is such a great way to actually, see wherever you're vacationing.
Yeah.
You do have to
I
run
haven't, I haven't,
though.
no, don't run. Don't run. Walk briskly, but don't run. Uh, I actually did this. The last trip that we went on was in Costa Rica, and I was in a fitness challenge. And I'll be honest, if I'm on vacation, I'm not great about working out. But in Costa Rica, I got up every morning, every single day. I think we were there for 10 days. Every single day, I went and did a workout. And it was typically, I found a little local gym. And it was actually cool because, like you said, you see the city, you see these little local gyms, you interact with people there, you get a new experience. And then you wake up, or when you get back, everybody's just kind of rolling out of bed and you're like fired up, you got energy, you're ready to go, and just way more productive throughout the rest of the day. So I definitely concur with all but the running. I did go on 2 runs over the past 3 days because we've got a Ragnar, you and I and some other guys have a Ragnar relay race coming up. Running is stupid. It is the dumbest. It is the worst thing ever. And I know guys are like, well,
uh,
it's only bad because you're saying that. No, it is objectively horrible. Like, this is not my, I'm not interjecting my bias against running. It is objectively
This is a fact.
horrible.
This is a fact by Ryan.
Oh my
Even if you
gosh.
think you like running, you're
You
wrong.
don't. You're wrong. You have lulled yourself into, I don't know, some sort of, what is it?
Something's wrong
Masochism,
with
where
you. Yeah.
yeah, where you just like being hurt and being in pain. And that's a mental disorder. That's not that you like running.
You need help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seek help if you're enjoying your running.
Sure. I will say a trail run is different. A trail run is definitely better than the treadmill and definitely better than the road.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I totally agree.
All right, Matt. So we're going to field questions.
Yeah, so we're going to field questions from the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. It is closed, but stay connected with us to know when that opens back up next quarter. Once again, orderofman.com/Iron Council. All right, our first question. Brad Yarbrough, what are some ways to practice delayed gratification? I've been working out consistently for about a year, and I've seen benefits from delayed gratification in fitness programs or in fitness progress. I've also been working on budgeting and reducing spending, which involves delayed gratification. Any other ideas to practice? And me personally, I just can't express how critical this is. I know Brad's asking this for himself, but like every parent should be saying, how do I help my kids practice delayed gratification? I don't know if you want to go there, Ryan, but maybe even just open it up even from a parenting perspective too, because I think this is so important.
Yeah, I actually think there's been some studies that I've seen, and I can't remember right offhand which studies. We can find those, or you can go look it up, that say that your ability to delay gratification, especially in youth, is one of the primary indicators of long-term success in their lives. And the notorious experiment that you hear about is the cookie experiment. I think it is cookie or candy, where they put a cookie in front of, they put a plate of cookies or whatever, one cookie in front of a kid, and they say, hey, you can eat this now if you want, or if you wait and an hour or whatever it is, then you can have 2 cookies. And so they actually show that as a determinant for success. So absolutely. The way the question is worded, it almost sounds like he's asking, in what ways can we practice delayed gratification? And I think there's an infinite number of ways. I'd rather approach it, and maybe this is what he's asking, from ways that where you're already practicing some level of delayed gratification. What can keep you going when you're enticed to quit or change directions or pivot before you see results? Because I think that's more important, because there's all sorts of ways with debt, with finances, with saving for a vacation, with cooking dinner, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you really think about it, anything difficult, anything that is not stimulating, like in a hackful way, right? Like video games and movies, anything that's slightly difficult that has a delayed benefit is practicing delayed gratification, right? Like you don't want to go to work, that's delayed gratification. You don't want to work out, that's delayed gratification. You don't want to mow the lawn, that's delayed gratification. It's almost everything that you, it's almost anything that you kind of don't want to do immediately in the moment.
When you say going to work is delayed gratification, explain that a little bit.
It depends on the person, right? Like, think about it. It's like, hey, I need to go to work. I know I should go to work. And maybe, I don't know, we're thinking about someone young that's like, oh, I just hate going and whatever. It's like, that's part of delayed gratification, right? Like when I think about a kid, or actually, I look at my past. I was raised on a farm. And when my dad woke me up Saturday mornings, and all my friends are going to go play or have fun or hang out, my dad goes, it's Saturday. I know what that means. It means I am busting my brow until the sun goes down today. I'm going to be exhausted. I hate this. I'm frustrated or whatever. But I got up. I just accepted it for what it was. But the irony was, at the end of the day, I felt great. I always felt great at the end of that day. And I always had a hard time starting that day. Yeah. That's delayed gratification. And there's no reap of that reward of that hard day's work until the end of the day.
Or the paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
So here's what I would say is, as far as like what we can do tactically to keep ourselves in the game. number one, find joy in the process. I know when we listen to self-development podcasts and books and all these sorts of things, we're led to believe that success means that you have to be miserable for a time. And I think there is an element of that, but the less miserable you can make the journey, the more likely you are to actually be engaged in the process. So I think about this when it comes to working out. We talk a lot about jujitsu. It's one of our favorite things to address and talk about. But look, if you hate jujitsu, like you dread it, you want to be fit, you want to be strong, you want to be capable, and you have to drag yourself into jujitsu every day, and you hate it there, and you hate the people, and you're miserable about it. Just don't do jujitsu. Like really, I mean, there's one element that it's supposed to be hard and difficult and challenging, but it should have some meaning to it. But if you're just dreading it, go do something else, right? If you're running, that's another great example. If you just dread running, like just don't run. Like go lift weights. Now I'm doing it because I'm preparing for this Ragnar, but so it has meaning associated with it, right?
Yeah.
Delayed gratification. But if you're miserable and you're just beating your head against the wall, it's probably not going to keep you in the game for a very long time. So think about it. Is it just discomfort, but you still know it's valuable, or are you dreading it? Because that's different. So find joy in it. And there's a lot of different ways to get to the end result. Find the one that's going to keep you in the game the longest. The next is when I look at long-term goals, some of those things can be very daunting. It can be overwhelming. And because it's so overwhelming, we might go for a week and we're like, oh my gosh, here's 100% of my goal. And I'm only at 1% of my goal. I've been doing this for a month or 2 months and I'm 1% of my goal, and it's discouraging. So what I would suggest to you is that you start with this goal or this objective that you have, and then break it down into smaller subsets, smaller goals of the larger picture that might help you along the path. So for example, let's say you want to lose 50 pounds. That's your goal. You want to lose 50 pounds. You want to get down to 15% body fat, but you're 30% right now, or whatever it is. It might take you a year, but you know what? You can lose a pant size this month. Right. And so that becomes a checkpoint, a little metric on your way to something bigger. Is like, hey, yeah, I'm going to lose 50 pounds for sure. But this month, my goal is to go down one pant size, or to go from a triple X to a double X t-shirt. Okay, that's manageable. You can do that, and you can actually see the result, and you stack up these little wins that are in alignment with your long-term horizon. So those are two strategies I would say. Do you have any others? And then we can talk about for kids as well.
Man, not really. Like, I think those are the same things. The other part is like sometimes, and it's I totally agree with you. I don't disagree with you, but I wonder like how many guys like don't go to the gym. And it's not because it's like, oh, well, Ryan said that if I don't really enjoy it, don't do it. And it's like, well, and that same person just dreads everything. And they're like, nothing is good enough. And it's like, well, the answer to you, if you're that guy, is change your attitude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because nothing may be enjoyable for you. Like we all know that we should have some physical well-being and we should have some physical fitness. If you can't find something on the list of activities and they're all miserable, we're not saying, well, just don't do them. We're saying, you know what, maybe you just need to change your attitude.
Yeah.
And just approach things in a more positive light as well. That's the only thing that really crossed my mind.
Yeah, there is nuance. Sometimes it comes across as we're saying in things in black and white, but everybody's smart enough. Even if they pretend like they're not, they're all smart enough to know, like, okay, is he saying don't go to the gym? Is he saying don't get fit because it's miserable? Of course, I'm not saying that. And I think we know that, but it is funny because people will play dumb and be dense on purpose. I don't know, to
justify
prove
their
a
actions.
Point or something. Yeah, right. Yeah. It's so strange. So
yeah, totally.
You got to consider too is what do you need as a listener? Like, what do you need? Are you the guy who's like, I don't know how to stay disciplined? Okay, then that's what you should focus on. But you might be the guy who's overly disciplined towards a pursuit at the expense of everything else around you. And that might be your battle that you need to work on.
Yeah.
That's something I fall prey to because I get really consumed with work and tunnel vision, target fixation. Nothing around me matters. No people, no other events. Like, this is it. And that personally is something that I've really needed to improve on in my life.
Yeah.
Like you don't
I
need to
am
convince me
so,
to be disciplined to work. Like it's just not a
yeah.
thing for me.
I'm exactly the same way. And it's kind of funny, right? Like here's a good analogy, right? Like, so we listen to Goggins, right? And it's like, hey, take souls, right? It's like, well, guess what? Cleaning the house with your kids and your wife, you shouldn't be taking souls during that, right? Like that's a bad time to be like uber focused and like
Right.
pissed off, but you got to clean house. It's like, well, that really wasn't an ideal state.
Yeah.
Maybe being more pleasant would be a good idea.
I found a lot of these. I just uploaded my 430th interview episode, and I found that a lot of these guys. I'm trying to think about the way that I want to say it. I was going to say they're miserable. That's not it, but they don't care really too much about anything but their thing.
Yeah.
Like
They're
they're
collateral
so
damage.
obsessed. They are so focused. And you know what? We need people like that to show us what's possible when you focus and go all in on something. But that's a decision that they've made. The ones who are aware of it know, hey, this other stuff is not important to me. And they know it and they're okay with it. They've weighed the decisions and they've made those decisions. And those aren't decisions that I'm totally comfortable with. So I got to live my life the way that I want, which means that I might have to throttle back in some aspects of my life because I don't want it to come at the expense of other aspects of my life. And we have to make those conscious decisions.
Yeah. And the power of knowing what the cost is awesome, because
Right.
most people don't ever do that, right? They never evaluate like, what is the cost of this?
Right.
And that's where
Because
we
then you
kind of
know
get
what it is and
sideways.
you decide, okay, do I want it or not?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's
So
also helps
kids.
you address I was going to say that also helps you address the fear of missing out. Because a lot of guys will be like, they'll see some event that somebody's putting on and like, oh, I'm not there. I wish, and blah, blah, blah. That to me is an indicator that you haven't weighed the cost of your decisions. And what I mean by that is that when there's an event this weekend and instead I choose to stay and coach my son's baseball team, I've weighed the pros and cons and I've made a deliberate choice. I don't even use language that gets it out of my
I
control.
can't.
Like I can't.
Yeah.
I don't use that. I can. I can go to that thing. Hey, I'm not going to. I'm choosing not to. I have other obligations I'm committed to. That's the language I use with myself and other people when it comes to events. And you know what? And then I see the pictures and I see everybody having a good time. It doesn't bother me. I'm unfazed because I've already weighed the cost and I've made intentionally another decision.
Yeah. I like it. How about kids?
Yeah, I
Thoughts
think,
there?
yeah, number one, make it fun. Obviously, they have
Yeah.
a shorter attention span than we do. So if you don't make it fun, it's not going to be enjoyable. Let them have some ownership in the way they achieve objectives and goals. So if they want to get in shape, they don't have to do jujitsu like you do. If they want to,
Yeah.
that's cool. But if they want to do something else, that's cool too. That was really hard for me to understand with my second son because my first is a lot like me. My second, pretty different than me. And I thought, hey, I've got to create these little clones. I've got to create these little mini me's. They got to do the things I do. They got to be involved in the things I'm involved in. It just isn't the case. And I found
Yeah.
that when they do things they're interested in, they're more committed to it. The other thing I would suggest is that you let them lead. If they're always following your lead, you're robbing them of a critical opportunity for them to take initiative. So I really like letting my kids teach me things that I don't know. When I go to the gym with my oldest son, I ask him, I say, hey, will you watch my form and critique me? And sometimes he's a little unfair in that critique because he's a kid and he's a punk and he thinks he knows it all. But other times, like he's pretty accurate. And that's good for him to be able to give me critique, to get feedback on how you communicate critique to people. Also lets me step out of the position of leadership and allows him to lead, makes him feel good that his dad is asking for advice. There's a lot of reasons why this is really, really advantageous. So step out of the leadership role for a minute, let them lead, let them direct, let them teach. And that's a powerful way for them to be excited and engaged in things. That's
Love
what
it.
I got for kids.
All right, Stacy Bauer, what keeps you going from day to day? we set up this nice routine to be better and healthier, but after so long, you have to remind yourself the why.
Well, I think the first thing is if you have to remind yourself to keep going. I've never really had this problem, so it's going to be hard for me to articulate. I think the reason I don't have this problem is because I know what I want. I've always been pretty clear about what I want. I don't really need to be I don't really need to be that motivated to do things. That's kind of an interesting phenomenon for me. People talk about motivation and inspiration, and it's good, it serves its purpose. I really just don't need a whole lot of that. In fact,
Yeah.
I find value in doing challenging things. And I have a system and I have a routine and I just check things off the list as I go because I know it leads to something greater. So maybe it's losing focus of what's important.
Yeah.
Maybe you're walking on this path, but you don't have your eyes on your target, and so you kind of veer off a little bit here and there. Maybe your target's not compelling enough. If you're going that way and it's just not enticing to you, maybe that's an indicator that you're going the wrong way. And that might be something that you evaluate. Maybe you don't even know where you're walking to begin with. And if you don't know where you're going, then you can just kind of casually stroll wherever external forces take you. So I would say this is probably a problem with vision. It's either not compelling enough to you, it's not emotionally charged, it's not drawing to you. You may not know what it is, but I think this is a vision problem more than anything else. What do you
Yeah.
think?
No, I mean, the only thing for me, it's, I kind of use this on my teenage kids in the past. And it's more of the stick side of this is like, what's the probable future? I think that's really, what's the natural consequence? So if, I don't know, if we're struggling with it, going to the gym or changing my diet and I'm overweight and, to the extent of being really unhealthy, getting really connected to the natural consequences of you not changing, I think is really impactful. And it's not, and I've used this analogy, maybe it's a little harsh, but it is what it is. It's like, but it's not like, oh, well, I won't have a six pack. No. It's worse than that, right? Like you will die earlier, right? You will lose years. And then you can go deeper and go, oh, well, my kids, right? My kids are going to pick up on my eating habits. And so they're going to eat the kind of crap I'm eating. They might end up getting overweight. Then they'll be shameful of their own bodies. And I helped create that. Right. Or what's all the people in my life that if I were on the path, if I was living an impactful life, they could look to me and it would make a difference in their lives. And I avoided that. And in fact, not only have I avoided it, but I've done the opposite. I've helped give them a pass for not showing up powerfully because I'm not showing up powerfully. Like you start, I don't know. For me, I start thinking through that and I go, whoa, there is so much I need to do and change. And the stakes are way higher than we give ourselves credit for. I think we walk around kind of thinking that there's power of one. And I think that we downplay our impact in the world. And the reality of it is if Ryan, if you're on the path of being the ideal person that God intended you to be, and I'm doing the same thing, there are people that need that need you, that need me, that need those that are listening. And if we're not showing up powerfully that way, they're not getting it maybe.
Yeah.
And that's kind of on us.
I think that can be powerful. I don't think that has the same weight for me as it sounds like it does for you. So I think it is important for us to figure out what that is. If it is that I would say the negative consequences of your action or inaction is what's driving you, then man, use that as fuel. For me, I don't find as much power in that as much as I do what could be, what is possible. That seems to be, and by the way, I'm not right or wrong, and neither are you. It's just whatever
but
is more compelling for us. And I think we all have a bit of both, right? Oh man, if I don't do this thing, something's going to happen. And that's powerful, but we all have it both. There's one thing I was thinking about as you were saying this. There's a word that really motivates me because of what it means to me. And that is excellence. And I'm not always the greatest at this, obviously, but I want to be excellent. And excellence is, to me, in a way, the goal in and of itself. So when I go to again, I'm not 100% on this. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is when I remind myself to be excellent, then I go to the gym with a different mentality. And it's not to get the 6-pack abs. It's not to get the guns. It's not to be a certain body weight. I mean, all that stuff will happen as an inevitable outcome, but it's for excellence. And so that means that I don't miss reps. Today I had to break up my dumbbell bench presses because towards the end it got heavy and I could really feel it on my left pec after that inch. And so I had to break it up. I could have stopped. Like, no, don't stop. Like, finish. Go back. Yeah, you can do 5 right now and then set them down and you can pick them back up. Pick them back up and do it. Why? Not so you can get stronger, but because you're striving for excellence. You know, when granted, my podcast studio is a bit of a mess and kind of empty now, but this is all going to get remodeled. When I build this, it's going to be excellent. It's not going to be thrown together. It's not going to be ugly. It's not going to be cheap equipment. It's going to be excellent. And so I've really found that the word excellence triggers something in me to do it a little bit better and a little bit more right than maybe I otherwise would. And it's the goal in and of itself. The outcome, I don't care. I just want to do it with excellence.
Yeah, I like that. Rob Thompson, yesterday I witnessed a woman being unreasonably rude and disrespectful to a Walmart employee. And I struggled with knowing if it was proper to respectfully call her out or to remain silent. She had 3 kids with her, and when one of her kids asked why she did what she did, she wrongfully justified her actions, teaching her kids a terrible lesson. Eventually, I decided to remain silent, but I struggle with whether I made the right choice and when is it appropriate to get involved. When should I mind my own business?
This is really tough because there's a lot of situations. Like, we talk about it often. We as men are protectors, right? So that actually will come at the risk of ourselves at times. So I think if people are in imminent danger, then I think it's our responsibility as citizens of the community and neighborhood to interject and do what we can to protect. But that places you at a risk. And I know a lot of guys, I've seen threads and things like that online where guys be like, well, you don't know the situation, and which is true. And you don't know what's going on or both sides of the equation, or you might get hurt. All of that is true. I'm not saying there isn't a risk with getting involved. There is. That's the cost of being a protector and the cost of being a man. But I think there's also a tactful way to do it, because the reality is you don't know what's going on. You actually don't know this situation. And so maybe this woman, maybe you saw all of it. I don't know, but maybe this woman was irate because the gal in the line, called her a name, maybe made a racist comment or something. I don't know. I don't know the story. And so she's responding to that. You don't know. So here's how I would suggest that you do it. You need a disruptor, because maybe this woman's just having a bad day too. Maybe she got some bad news, or, she's dealing with financial burden or hardship or relational issue. And like, she's just having a shitty day, and it's just all coming out in a really inappropriate way. So a disruptor is good. And a disruptor might be, hey, ladies, I can't help but overhear your conversation. Everybody can. I just want to know, is everything okay here? That alone might be just enough of a disruptor that the woman who's yelling is like, oh, yeah, maybe I need to step back, or gives the other woman response time to maybe call security if that's what needs to happen. I don't know the situation, but little disruptors like that, those are going to be a huge, huge deal. And if you can do that appropriately in those situations, I think you're going to find that problems de-escalate. And that's also when that lady's yelling and you're like, hey, I can't help but overhear your conversation, the way you're yelling or talking, and everybody else can hear you too. She might say, oh my goodness, like, I'm being a total ass right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I
can't. And I can't help but think it's just like skillfully, right? Like, somebody look at this as like, well, I'm a man. So hey, ladies, shut the, and it's like, well, you're not even helping. Right. And this is now about your ego and trying to show up a certain way. So really it's like, do you look at the circumstance from the perspective of like an enforcer of righteousness or empathy and caring, and then I think if you approach it from that perspective, I'm just saying you might want to work through what this is. I think we all should actually. In fact, this is a great question because I'm thinking now in my mind's like, okay, well, how would I do that in an effective way where both ladies are not threatened by my involvement either? And they actually see it from the perspective of like, I'm trying to help. And how powerful is that? I'm not going in there trying to protect my ego, trying to look good or anything else. Like to your point, right? This could be a miserable day for this woman. And maybe she just needs some help. And maybe that's our job, right? Is to serve them, right? Not necessarily, come across like some hard ass.
Well, I think about this too with another scenario I often hear about is maybe in public, a man is verbally abusive towards a woman, or maybe even being physically abusive or sexually abusive. It's like, do you get involved? Well, yeah. Yeah, you don't know. Again, you don't know the whole side of the story. Maybe she hit him first. I'm not saying go up and stab the guy or even get into a physical altercation with him. I'm saying interject and figure out what in the world is going on. So the way you do that is safely. Maybe you're in your vehicle. You're in a safe environment. Crack your window because you see something going on in the parking lot. Crack the window. Hey, you two, you're making quite a ruckus over here. Is everything okay? Because now you're drawing the attention of everybody. And I don't know what the story is. I don't know what's going on, but I need to come over here and figure out what's going on because this is creating an environment here in the public that is keeping other people from being safe. And if the guy's like, mind your own effing business, say, no, this is my business. I'm not here to get into it with you. I'm not here to fight with you. I'm not even here to judge what's going on, but I'm here. My family is here. There are other people here, and this is absolutely my business. What do we need to do here? Do we need to call the police? Do we need to just leave? Like, what is it? What's the solution here?
Yeah.
But you do that from a safe enough space. Like you don't get up in his face because now you put yourself in unnecessary harm or risk.
Yeah. And you're not helping, right? In that example, in most cases.
Maybe even in that situation, just you going, and let's say hypothetically a woman is in danger, just going up and interjecting that way from a safe way gives that woman enough time to flee and go run in the store or do whatever. But yes, of course you interject again in a reasonable way. I saw this one a couple of weeks ago. There was this guy on a plane. He was acting irate and he was saying he was going to kill all the men on the plane. It like just being absolutely insane. And the flight attendants were having a hard time rallying this guy up. And all the men on the plane are just sitting there like trying to ignore it. It's like, what in the world? What are you do? Like, of course you interject, you get up. And you know what? When you get up, there should be 15 other men that get up on the plane, or you even turn to the guy and say, hey, you and I, you don't even need to look at, you and I are going to do something about this. Let's go.
Yeah.
And you lead the way men lead. Again, you're not there to get into a physical altercation because I don't want you to get shot or stabbed. But the minute you pipe up, somebody realizes, oh, I can't do this without any consequences.
Yeah. This is so crucial accountability, crucial conversations, 2 great books, same author around the subject, I think would be a good resource. The other thing is, I don't know, man, I almost feel like this should be training. Like we never have training around this, it'd be really valuable to work through the proper way, because that's why we don't do this, right? That's why most people don't bring up something, because they've jumped to the conclusion of, well, if I do this, then I'm going to get in a fight and blah, blah, blah. And they go to the conclusion and they bypassed whether something should be said or not.
Right.
And the answer is something should be said. Now, the second question is, now, how do I do it? Right. And we never really get reps, right? Because of the fear of the confrontation. I don't know. Maybe something we do in the future, or I don't know, something, but I think it'd be valuable.
I
Because
think
it's
so
part
too.
of self-defense. This is part of self-defense. This is part of self-awareness of how do you deal in these difficult situations? How do you maintain distance at the same time? And the conversation that you need to have to be safe at the same time.
Right. I think it'd be invaluable.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to look into how we might incorporate that or who we would bring in to help with some of that. We'd obviously want somebody or like how we can incorporate this into an event. That's actually
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
think on that.
totally.
Anyways,
Okay.
that's my thought.
All right. Brandon Bonner. Good morning, Ryan and Kip. I'm currently intrigued by the ideas centered around intermittent fasting versus prolonged fasting. I don't know the difference, by the way. What experience, if any, do you have with fasting? What benefits have you noted? Any related resources you recommend? Thank you.
Look, so the difference intermittent
What's
fasting
prolonged?
is
Yeah.
prolonged would be like you fast for 24 to 72 hours.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I
Versus
assume
intermittent for your window, your like 12-hour window or whatever.
Yeah, I think
Or
it's
16-hour
I think
window.
it's
I
an
think
8 hour
it's
window. I think it's 16
is it
hour
8?
of
Okay.
fat. Yeah,
8-hour eating, 16-hour
16-hour
fasting window. I
fast.
think so.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And that's basically I just call that don't eat breakfast. So marketers, they love to get ideas
Yeah.
and package it. Look, I'm a marketer, so I get it. It's just don't eat breakfast. And because if you eat your last meal at 8 and you eat lunch at what is that, noon, then that's the 16 hours, right? So
Yeah.
just don't eat breakfast and you're doing intermittent fasting. There's a lot of health benefits. I'm not an expert on it, so I really won't get into all of that because I'm not an expert on it. I do periodically do like a 24-hour fast and I did one about a month or two ago, and it was we did 72 hours, and it was water, and I think I did cheat a little bit. I ended up having like a couple of different protein shakes twice, I think. But outside of that, I didn't have anything else for that time frame. And there was a lot of mental clarity that came with that. There was a lot of it was for, and I won't get into details, but it was for personal reasons to have some spiritual connection, and uh, it helped put things in perspective and context of the weight of what I was dealing with at the time.
Yeah.
So I felt like there was a spiritual component. I felt like there was obviously a physical clarity component. And then the idea of just sacrificing something and realizing it's not the end of the world and you can do hard things. And now, as far as like the actual physiological benefits, you can talk with somebody else on that. I don't really know. There's some Sean Stevenson, I think, with Model Health Show talks about it. I'm sure Andrew Huberman has done something
Yeah.
on intermittent fasting and prolonged fasting. So I would defer the physiological benefits to the experts. I'm just telling you my own anecdotal evidence that it was good. It was a good experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had the same benefit. I think intermittent fasting, my dilemma always is that I train at noon for jujitsu. So, and there's no eating lunch and then going hopping on the mats. So
Oh,
I
of
would
course not.
never end up eating until about 2 or 3. And I normally don't eat breakfast. So I intermittent fast all the time. And the other benefit or the hack of it was, it's like come 3 p.m., if I was tracking my micronutrients, it's like I can do whatever I want, right? Because I haven't eaten, my eating window is so small that's like,
Right. You can eat whatever.
it gave me the freedom to not be so stressed out about my intake. But once again, I'm the same way. I don't know all the quote unquote details and the benefits of it. I just know that sometimes when I'm doing intermittent fasting, I don't mind it. Like in fact, I train better on an empty stomach than I
Me
do
too.
with food in me.
Me too.
So I'd prefer that workout or that jujitsu training while fasting.
I don't really get into the biohacking thing too much. For me, I tend to be fairly intuitive, and that's not to say I always eat correctly. I certainly don't. I demolished a Little Caesars pizza the other night, and it was delicious, and I didn't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Thin crust, pepperoni with bacon on it was awesome. Don't let Johnny, my trainer, hear that, but that's what I did.
Yeah.
But like the way I look at it is we all know what to do, and we don't need
Listen to
to
your body.
game it, and we don't need to hack it. Like we all know, eat meat, like eat a fist size of meat, eat a cup of vegetables, and maybe a starch like rice and water. Like, there's your diet advice. Now, are you always
Yeah.
going to follow that? No. But if you do that 80% of the time, you're going to be lean. You're going to get jacked. You're going to reduce your body fat. You're going to improve your health. I don't know how. I don't know all the metrics and physiology. We know. That's what I
Yeah.
know. If you want to have breakfast
Yeah.
in the morning because you're hungry, have a couple eggs, have a piece of bacon. I'd probably say avoid the orange juice, but what do I know? If you can just drink water, I think that's better. We all know what to do.
On the subject delayed gratification earlier, you know, my wife and I, we had this conversation just not too long ago about, you know, fasting once a month, and we didn't really have our kids doing it. And I thought, you know what? No, they're old enough. This is good for them. This is good for them to practice on that Sunday to go, yeah, guess what, kids? We're not eating till dinner.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm so hungry. It's like, yeah, that's good. You know, like
Yep.
you're in control of your body. Yeah. So, you know, there's some, I guess, some delayed gratification benefit there
Good
to
call.
help your kids kind of see that.
Good call.
All right. Drew. Yeah, I actually had a chat with Drew not too long ago. So Kip, and maybe I should have read this ahead of time. When reaching out to someone in a workplace setting to share employee engagement and retention solutions, is it better to simply introduce myself and ask thoughtfully worded questions initially, or share some of the solutions in a meaningful way and a way for the individual to engage in the timing is right for them? Thank you both for your mentorship. Let me think through that. Are you following what he's asking?
I think so. I'll give some
Okay, go
input.
ahead.
He wants to hear from you,
Yeah.
but I'll just give some generic input. What you're talking about is dancing the line on
On the
unsolicited
sales
feedback.
side. Yeah. And sales, right?
No, I
It's kind of
think
what
he's
we're talking
talking
about too.
about, oh, is he talking? I, I don't know. I actually don't know if he's talking
Okay.
about somebody within his organization or somebody that he's consulting or coaching outside of his organization that's a potential client.
Got it.
Look,
Okay.
here's my take. Be very, very careful of offering anytime unsolicited feedback. I don't care if you're in a sales environment or if you're in you want to talk with your supervisor about something. Just be cautious in offering unsolicited feedback. And here's why. When's the last time you were offered unsolicited feedback and you were like, gee, thanks for that? Like, that was really
Yeah.
awesome. I'm glad you said that. Even if that person was right and being thoughtful, like, it just doesn't happen. Nobody wants unsolicited feedback. Not only could you be wrong, you could be wasting the person's time. You could aggravate them. You could present solutions that don't really apply to their situation. It's like there's nothing beneficial that comes from it.
Yeah.
So always, to your point, ask thoughtful, engaging questions, and then you get to the root of it. And if the answer is like, this person isn't interested or doesn't want or doesn't need what I have to offer, cool, that's it. But if they do, then you'll uncover that through questions, and that will give you the permission to get to some of that feedback. And by then, it'll be more solicited than unsolicited.
Totally. In a workplace where someone's intention is not clear and it's not almost even declared, and then there's a switch up mid conversation. So if Ryan and I are having a conversation and I'm not sure why we're having the conversation, it's not 100% clear, then midway it's like, oh, you're trying to give me feedback,
Or
man.
trying to sell me something.
Yeah, that is untrustworthy. It is negative town, right? You almost, like, it's almost to the element of like, I don't trust you as a person anymore. That's how careful we need to be about our intentions. So, and it's okay. Like if you need to get feedback, like let's say we're in a management position or whatever, and I'm like, hey, I need to get feedback, then declare that.
Right.
If the intent of the call is, hey, I have some ideas. I don't know if they're a good fit for you or not, but if it's okay with you, I would like to present these ideas for your consideration. Then say that. But if you don't say that and you finagle it into the conversation, no, it's not going to go well. Now I don't trust you. Next time you reach out, it's like, man, who knows what the intent of this call is. So declare the intention. And by the way, that's super critical, even from a management and leadership perspective. When you're doing a review with an employee, don't go into the review going, hey, Ryan, you're doing so great. And what? No. You go in there saying, hey, we need to talk about something. Here's the intent of the conversation. Now, if there's some concern that you might take it wrong, address the concern up front. My concern is that you might see this, as too much of a negative feedback, or you might overreact. And I want to declare that I actually really do value in the organization, but I need to give you this feedback so you can grow and we can improve or whatever. Transparency, man. Transparency on the intent, as well as addressing any of those concerns up front.
I'm really glad you said that, because the advice that I gave about asking thoughtful questions could actually go down the path you're talking about too. Because if people feel like you're backing them into a corner, they're going to get pissed. So a way that might happen is, if I have an agenda and my agenda is to sell Kip, my program that I offer that will increase your sales, a question I might be tempted to ask you, if I'm not very good at this, is, hey, Kip, do you want to have more sales? It's like, bro, worst question you could have ever asked, because obviously the answer is yes. And it's a rhetorical question. And now they know all you're doing is teeing them up to sell your thing. So don't grill people like, hey, do you want to make sales? What's your sales now? How would you do it? What's been a struggle for you? What's been good for you? What's worked? What hasn't? What have you tried? Holy cow. Ease up. Just ease up. If you're looking at this with an agenda of serving you, which is making a sale and not the other person, they're going to feel that energy for sure. And also lengthen out the time. Too many people think that this just has to happen in a transaction. And that's where you start getting yourself into trouble. Instead of transactionary, it should be a relationship. Against relationary, is that a word? It should be a relationship that I'm building with you. So it's not me going in there and grilling you so I can sell my thing. It's me going in there and getting to know you, like dating. You wouldn't go on a date and say, hey, what do you want to, so are you going to get married? How many kids do you want? What's your political views? What's your debt income ratio? How many guys have you slept with? Like, you would never ask all those questions. You would hopefully take it slow and let it develop and see where it goes. Push a little when you need to, draw back when you need to. It's the same thing when you're working to serve other people.
Yeah, totally. All right, Michael Barr, dealing with difficult, unruly colleagues over the phone or chat. I've been simply closing the chat as a consequence of their bad behavior, but my employer has established methods of dealing with such situations. I would rather not talk to these people when they're going in with guns blazing, of course. I don't want to get in trouble at work.
Well, if your boss has a system for dealing with these situations, then that's the system you have to use, unless you and your boss have a discussion and you can identify a better system.
Yeah.
Like if the current system doesn't work to address the problem, then let them know. If you're my supervisor, Kip, I'd be like, hey, I know you have this system in place, and it's a good idea, because man, people tend to get pretty heated over some of these things that we're talking about. One thing I've noticed is that the systems we have in place seem to shut down communication altogether. And I think it takes it a little too far, because not only can we not talk about the issue, we can't even talk about anything at all because we close everything down. And I'm wondering if there's a better way where we can address the negative behavior, but still keep the conversation on track and going so it benefits us all. What do you think about that? That's how you would approach your supervisor with a better system. Again, like we were talking about in the last question, you're asking questions. You're not telling him his system sucks. You're asking him to come up with a solution for based on what you've seen. Your intent is clear. I want to keep the lines of communication open. So I think this ties in nicely with what we had just talked about. But just shutting something down, that's not helpful, because all it does is it shuts off communication, obviously, and there's things that need to be talked about. And it makes people resentful, because now they just have to bottle everything up. Maybe they have real issues. They just suck at delivering it. And if you just shut down the conversation altogether, then they internalize that stuff, and then it blows up in a month.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want that at work. Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's a better way to do it, but you need to go through the proper channels. You can't just go against whatever your boss or employer is looking for or already has in place. I think there's some opportunity to work with them about how to create a more effective system.
Yeah. Patrick Calhoun, what are ways to overcome the fear of failure or the unknown in a project once you get past the initial excitement of starting it? I find that I can put so much energy into anything, and then something always holds me back from continuing it or finishing it.
Well, I want to know what is holding you back. He says something is it just fear, or is there something that comes up? What is actually holding you back from completing or finishing it?
Yeah.
I mean, what could it be? I just, I can't relate with this question.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not fearful. There's always fear, but to me, I'm like, okay, well, let's go find it. Let's go figure it out. Let's address it. I want to know like what's around that corner. I don't know. I'm scared, but I still want to look. Like I want to take a peek. I want to go.
Yeah.
This is just, I don't know. I don't understand. And here's one thing I would suggest: like play it out. Play out the worst possible scenario.
Yeah.
It's probably not that bad. Like you're probably still alive. You probably have all your limbs. You're probably not financially destitute. Your relationship is probably still intact. Like play the thing out. And I think you'll see when you pull the veil back, it's not really as scary as maybe you're making it out in your mind. And some of those intangibles are hard to quantify. Like, yeah, people will think I'm a loser. Well, you know what? Plenty of people probably already do. Like me, especially with the news that I've shared over the past several months about what's going on in my personal life. Yeah, I've had all sorts of doubts and fears and concerns about people would leave, which some have, and people would think less of me, and some do, and people will call me a hypocrite, and some have. It's like, and so what?
Yeah.
I mean, not so what? Like, it's.
But
I'm not saying it's not weighted, but what I'm saying is so what? Like, I still believe in the mission. I still am going to drive forward. I'm still going to improve my life. I'm still going to work to serve guys. All of that risk means nothing in the grand scheme of things because I know where I'm going and I have to keep pushing forward in spite of what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
In spite of the risk that I might deal with.
Yeah. You're following your thought to a conclusion, right? And that's what we often don't do. Oh, Ryan, well, people are going to do this. And then they stop thinking. Versus going, hey, guess what? People may think less of me. Okay. So what am I going to do about it? Right. So what does that mean? How's this going to hold me back? How do I pivot? How do I adjust? Like you're following it to a conclusion versus just going negative town on a thought and just stopping.
Well, and if you follow it, like here's one that I've heard over the past several weeks is like, I've heard this quite often. Ryan, you should step down. You should step down. You should let somebody else come in. You should step down. Okay, let's follow that thought process for a minute. If you're so upset about what's going on with my personal life that you feel like I should step down and that you think it's diminished the organization, then is it safe to assume that if I step down and bring somebody up, that you'll stick around? Well, no, of course not. If you're that upset about it, even if I step down, you'd leave anyways.
Yeah.
Like I play the scenario out. And, the other thing is, I think about in this context is imagine, I'm just talking about some of the risks and some of the fears that we have because I think it's important we address them. Imagine that you grew up watching Arnold Schwarzenegger and he just meant the world to you, his discipline, his commitment, his physique, his strength. And so you started to get into strength training, powerlifting, bodybuilding because of him. And it drastically improved your life. You got stronger, you got fitter, you developed more confidence. That translated into making more money and more relationships. It just got better. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger got fat for a year.
Where you find out he's juicing the whole time and you're a natural builder.
So then does that mean that his message was horrible? Does that mean that everything that he shared or everything that you did as a result of it is now gone and diminished because he didn't take his advice as well as maybe he would have liked? Or maybe he got sidetracked and then stepped back on the path down the road. Of course not. You're like, okay, well, that sucks, but that advice is still, it still improves my life and I still see how beneficial it is. The reason I bring this up is because we have all sorts of fears and doubts and worries and concerns about how people will perceive us and how they'll view us and what they'll think of us. And you know what? A lot of it is actually founded. A lot of people will think negatively. A lot of people will judge you. But guess what? They're doing it anyways.
Yeah.
They're doing it anyways. And the things that we're afraid of really aren't things that should slow us down. I'm not going to say we shouldn't be afraid of them. Maybe there's a reason we should, but they shouldn't slow you down. They should give you cause for maybe some pause to figure out what you need to do and the way you need to tactfully approach this, but then go, finish, complete, keep going. Okay, you're scared. I'm scared. We're all scared. Keep going.
Yeah. The other idea for Patrick that might like kind of get that wind out of our sails after the initial excitement. And we do see this in the Iron Council with new guys coming in, and those battle plans are just amazing, right? Or you get someone that's just on the path, right? And they're just going hardcore and super motivated or whatever. And eventually reality hits, right? And it's like, whoa, you know what? This is harder. Right. Or we had some expectation of how easy it was going to be, or how there wasn't going to be resistance in the process from those that we love in our families or whatever. So, and I'm not saying go into our goals and our objectives from a place of fear and negativity, but we also need to be realists, right? And there's value, right? We do this from a work perspective all the time, right? What are the risks to this project? Awesome. We have a plan. We have a strategy we want to move forward. What are the potential roadblocks that are going to arise? Oh, my wife may not want to switch her entire cooking and diet and her diet to support mine. I may get unmotivated. I may not want to do this. I have vacation coming up. How am I going to keep working out? Right. Identify what those potential obstacles are and those roadblocks, and manage your expectations of the level of difficulty. I've always believed this, and maybe it's just because I'm overly optimistic maybe at the beginning of things, but everything always takes longer. Always. I don't care what it is. It always takes longer. I mean, I went down to the lake house today, and we had to build a trench 4 feet deep, probably about 15 feet. 4 feet deep, 15 feet long. And I had a backhoe. And Asia's expectation was what? Well, you could get that done like in an hour.
Get that done this morning. Yeah.
6 hours later, right? We finally got it done. It's like, oh man, none of us thought it was it's always going to take longer. It's always going to be a little bit harder. It's better to assume that it's going to be more difficult than not. That way you can mitigate that risk.
Yeah, it's just like you said, it's just being a realist about the expectations. And also what you do is when you do that is you don't allow yourself to get blindsided. You're like, oh, I anticipated this. Yep. I knew this would happen. And here was my contingency plan. So let's go ahead and implement that now. Implement your contingency plan and then keep driving on. Don't let it deter you.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeremy Roach, what tools do you use to maintain your calm and composure when children and spouse say or do something that irritates you? Jeremy, be a man, dude. Just joking.
I was going to say, I don't know. I don't have any.
It's not a big deal.
No, I was going to say, I don't know how to do that. I haven't figured it out yet. It's a big deal. I just haven't figured it out. I mean, this is an issue with me, is I get stressed. I get excited. Again, wake of collateral damage stuff. I got shit to do. And if you're over here complaining or talking to me about this, I'm like, that stresses me out because that's not on my radar right now. I'm focused on this. I will say the one thing that has been helpful for me is margin. Like if I just have some margin, some space to think, some time. This week looks awesome right now. I have one meeting today, one tomorrow, one on Wednesday. That's about my speed because I know other meetings will come up. I had somebody that wants to talk this afternoon. So that came up. Now, normally that'd stress me out. Not today because I didn't have anything on the calendar this afternoon. By design, I keep it minimal by design because I know different things are going to come up and it doesn't stress me out when I have that space. It's when I don't have space, when appointments are back to back, or I have, this task and that task, and I'm just juggling all of this stuff that I need to do. And I always lash out at my ex-wife and my children, even, I lose my patience, I lose my cool. And that's just, I wish I didn't have that problem. I do, but I'm telling you, the margin thing has been helpful for me. Just back up,
Totally.
create buffers in your schedule. If you can't talk to your wife or your kids about a certain issue, then just tell them that, hey, hon, I know that's important. It's important to me too, because it's important to you. I can't talk about that right now because I have these other things, but I can talk about that tonight after dinner. Is that okay? I know it's important. I know it's maybe on a bit of a time schedule, but I can do it after dinner. Does that work?
Yeah.
If it works, good. If it doesn't, find some time, negotiate your schedule a little bit, but yeah, don't allow yourself to get like mentally and emotionally boiling and then expect that you're just going to be patient and calm and cool with everybody. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Totally. Let me try. Let me see how I do. I'm going to go a different path a little bit. So when we're out of integrity, it often gets grouped with blame and victimhood and some form of a finger being pointed at someone else, which causes irritation, frustration, and everything else. And I'm not saying this is necessarily the case for you, Jeremy, but for me, when I don't show up today in a way that I should, when I didn't get the things done that I should have gotten done, when I drag my feet, I didn't get my workout in, I'm out of integrity in all these magical ways. Guess what comes with it? Woe is me comes with it. Oh man, because I have to excuse why I didn't get those things done. Well, it's because I'm so busy. And usually if it's I'm so busy, it's accounted with, and my wife's not so busy.
Or she doesn't understand.
She doesn't understand me. They don't do these things. And so then when I come home, if the world is not perfect, I'm pissed off. Why isn't this done? Why isn't this done? Because why? Because I am showing up in a really weak way all day today. And I've been blaming the world so I could justify how shitty I am as a person. And I go home and I continue the path. So maybe possibility is be careful that you're not lashing out at everyone else to justify your lack of showing up.
It's good, man. There's a lot of guilt associated with that as well. And so now you have extra emotional baggage because you have guilt and it's just too much. It's all too much.
You feel bad about yourself. You don't feel good.
Yep. And it's just, it just all comes like a house of cards. It comes crashing down because I really like what you said there, because you're out of integrity with the way, you should have shown up and you didn't show up that way. Very interesting perspective. Yeah. Cool. Let's take one more as a rapid fire.
One more. Okay. David Raffer, steps on finding homeschool friendly states with lots of freedom.
Good luck.
America.
I don't know. So one thing I would look at is what are
Are some states not homeschool friendly?
Well, some states require a lot. I think I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but every state allows you to homeschool. Some states will not allow you to participate in extracurricular activities with the school district.
School.
Yeah.
Got it.
Utah allows you to, Maine does. A lot of states will allow your children to participate in sports, for example, even though they don't actually go to the public school, because you're paying the taxes. You don't get to absolve yourself of paying taxes until there's maybe some sort of voucher that would qualify for homeschooling. But I don't think that's the case. Outside of that, really, it's going to be the requirements of each state. There's reporting requirements that the state has, and my ex-wife did all of this, so she knows all of the requirements and she knows all of that stuff. But yeah, you have to report how many hours they're doing and what curriculum you're using and what you taught them. And some schools, or excuse me, states require a lot of reporting and others require minimal reporting. Generally, I think you could probably look at the more conservative states. And again, generally, that's probably going to be less stringent as far as homeschooling goes. but I don't know. There's probably homeschooling resources that you could use or look into for which states allow what and which states. Maybe even some of these curriculums, like we use the good and the beautiful. No, good and the good and the, I don't know. That sounds like a soap opera. Is that what it's called? The good and doesn't it sound like a soap? That's a soap opera,
It
right?
does sound like a soap opera. Yeah.
That's what my grandma used to watch. We'd go over there and at like noon, we'd have to watch Bold and the Beautiful, I think is what it was. Anyways, you could look at some of these homeschool curriculums and they might have resources on which states allow what and what the requirements are for that. That seems like a pretty standard Google question. Would be better on that than I think me.
Yeah. Ask Chat GPT. They'll tell you.
Careful of that stuff.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, we mentioned we filled the questions from the IC from the Iron Council. To learn more, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Of course, you can connect with us also on Facebook. That's facebook.com/group/orderofman. And then connect with Mr. Mickler on the Insta and Twitter at Ryan Mickler, and stay connected. And so you can get updates on the latest and the greatest, and band with us.
That's right. Cool. Well, Kip, I appreciate you. Glad to have you back. Guys, appreciate you and the question that you asked. Hopefully we gave you some answers to consider at least. And we will be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.